Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Stuart Cohen. We'll get started in just a second, just waiting for some of your colleagues to log in, and then we'll get started on today's subject. As you can see, it is selling cybersecurity for MSPs, the process, the pitfalls, and the presentation. So we'll get started in just a moment or two. We're excited to have a fireside chat today with Jennifer and with Matthew. And we're just waiting, as I said, for a few people to log in. We'll give them a couple of seconds to get started, and then we'll begin our process. In the meantime, why don't we just go to the next slide and just cover a few things while people are coming on and logging in. As always, with our cybersecurity thought leadership series, you know, we want to keep these interactive. We want them to be, if you will, kind of a public service announcement orientation. It's not a Nodeware sales call. It is not to talk about Nodeware itself. We want these interactive. You know, feel free to ask questions in the chat at any time, and between Matthew or myself, we'll make sure we get the questions in front of Jennifer and we'll get them addressed. Also, as you know, we do these once or twice each month. We've had a series of people from CISA and the MSP community, and from, you know, Tony Sager from the Center for Internet Security. We've had, you know, Ron Ross from NIST and others. So if you have a particular topic or a particular presenter you'd like to have on our sessions, we're happy to do that for you. And for all of our MSP partners, we're happy to provide custom registration links for you. So anybody that you get that signs up for one of these sessions, you know, we give back to our partners so they can follow up from a prospect standpoint. So with that, let's go to the next slide. We've got a couple of other events coming up. As I said, we provide an opportunity for people that are interested in seeing a demonstration of Nodeware, or just to ask any questions they might have. We'll do these in reverse order. We do the Nodeware live demo and peer Q&A call once a month. So if you're not ready for a demonstration, but you kind of want to see what's going on, or you want to hear what's on the mind of other people, you can do that at our Nodeware live demo and peer Q&A call. And we've got Bill on with us from Network Builders IT, an MSP peer of yours, to answer any questions. And then, as always, we have, for our 7-figure MSP members, we have the open office capabilities. So if you're a 7-figure MSP member, you can come to that session, you can ask your questions, you can hear from some of your peers, and it gives you an opportunity to go through Nodeware in detail and a little bit about what continuous vulnerability management is all about, how important continuous vulnerability management is in your stack, how you deploy that, which is part of what today's discussion is all about as it relates to selling cybersecurity to MSPs. So if we could go to the next slide. Before I introduce Matthew, and Matthew can introduce Jennifer, just as a reminder, if you have any questions, put them into the chat box. Also, this will be recorded, so if you want a copy of the recording, we'll be able to get that out to you. It'll be on our YouTube channel. We'll also make it available to Jennifer and Matthew and everybody to distribute as well. There will be copies of the slides. They will obviously be included in the recording. And if you have any follow-on questions, you know, please reach out to any of us, and we'll be happy to have any follow-on discussions, any demonstrations, any discussions, proof of concepts, or whatever's appropriate. But once again, this is designed to be much more of a public service announcement to talk about how do we help the MSP community, you know, grow and flourish, be more effective, be more efficient. So with that, Matthew, I will turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you. Hey, everyone. My name is Matthew Koenig. I'm the VP of Channel Sales for Nodeware. And today we're going to kind of have a fireside chat with Jennifer Bleam. Jennifer's the owner and founder of MSP Sales Revolution. She's an expert in the world of sales and marketing when it comes to the channel. And she's written a pretty cool book that you may have seen or may not have seen, but you'll have a chance to win one today on how to sell cybersecurity services. Jen, say hey.
Hey there. Thank you so much for having me on. Super excited to be here.
Very cool. We're glad to have you. So what we're going to start with is some statistics today. And why statistics have to do with selling? Well, because I think you need to understand what's going on out there, what people are saying, and what your customers might be thinking before you go in there. So, you know, right now, these are 2021 statistics. 2022 have not been completely compiled yet. So first one, 60% of cyber attacks target small businesses. I know you hear over and over again, and we're going to cover this in the presentation, that I'm too small to get hacked. It's never going to happen to me. Yeah, okay. There are also over 30 million businesses that are classified as SMBs out there. I know a lot of you, consider your target market the SMB marketplace. So the point to that is there is plenty of opportunity out there and plenty of people that really don't grasp security. 66% of small businesses have had at least one cyber incident in the last year. There was a 424% increase in small business cyber attacks, especially during the pandemic when everybody was going home. 66% of small businesses are actually now concerned about cybersecurity. It takes an average of 212 days to identify a breach. Now, we'll go into a little bit later how we can help with that, but know that if you've got a vulnerability and someone can access it, it takes an average of 212 days to find that, which means someone's got 212 days to be in that network and to gather information.
I'm going to interject. This is going to be fun. You guys are going to see me, Matthew and I interplay with each other. So I know this is like really basic math, but I want to remind you that because that says average, that means that there are some that are more than 212, some that are less. And so from a sales standpoint, when you say average of 212 days, your prospect is going to be like, okay, so 212 days. Not necessarily. It could be significantly longer than that. It also, you can put some things in place to make it considerably less than that. And so it'll be less days and they will then be above average. So Matthew, continue.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially if they're not doing the right things.
Correct.
So again, and we'll talk about this, 54% of businesses think, I'm never going to get hacked. I'm too small. Not going to read the rest of them. You can look at them, you'll get the presentation. But this is my favorite, Jennifer, my favorite statistic ever. 25% of small businesses didn't realize a cyber attack would cost them money.
Interesting.
It blows my mind that you have CEOs of companies, because that's who was interviewed for these, literally saying that could cost me money. I don't know that I'd actually say that out loud.
It really underscores how much of a difference there is between the MSPs that are walking in with a tremendous amount of knowledge and the prospect or the customer, depending who you're talking to, that has a completely different perspective on the world. And they're wrong and you're right, but how do you position yourself? How do you have that conversation, which is part of what we're going to talk about.
Without being argumentative or pushy about it.
Correct. Yep.
And I think a lot of MSPs, as they haven't had professional sales training, go firstly to, well, you're wrong. And, as you know, if you approach someone from that standpoint, they automatically go on the defensive and you're not going to get to where you want to go. But we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do to bring them back to your side, right? Tell them they're wrong without telling them they're wrong.
Yes, agreed. I was on a role play yesterday or the day before where someone said, well, I think you're completely unprotected and you don't know it. And I'm like, oh, cringy, please don't do that in real life. That's why we have role plays, right?
That's awesome. So what's the opportunity? Why should I sell cybersecurity? Besides, I know that it's growing like crazy. Besides the fact that some of my customers are asking for it. And besides the fact that compliance regulations and insurance companies are requiring it, let me give you a little bit of information that should hopefully make you happy. SMB cybersecurity spend is currently at $57 billion, but it's going to increase to $90 billion by 2025. And the bulk of this will be in North America. It's estimated that there are 40,000 MSPs in North America. That number can fluctuate on every given day. Also based on the definition of what these people are using as MSP. However, let's go with that. Let's say that's true. That means assume every one of them selling cybersecurity, which again, we know is not the case. Correct. But I wanted to bring it down to the most common denominator, the least possible. that means your share of the cybersecurity market for SMBs should be an additional 2.25 million a year in revenue. That if every one of these people were selling it, and if you did the bare minimum. My point with all this is, do I get in this? Is it worth it? Is it worth to learn how to sell this effectively? I don't know. I think 2.25 million answers the question right there. Jennifer,
Well,
I mean, am I off my rocker?
I don't think you're off your rocker. And I would even say, like, so that's very logical, right? So we're going to talk about like logic versus emotion. That's a very logical reason why 100% you need to get on board and start to sell cybersecurity. But emotionally, if you're not selling cybersecurity, at least to your clients, existing clients, and the new clients that are coming to you throughout the next few years, you're opening up your company for a tremendous amount of risk. And so that should scare you. That should make you say, oh no, what if I get a phone call from my after hours tech at 3 o'clock in the morning next Thursday, and our biggest 3 clients or all of our clients have a massive issue because I didn't sell them cybersecurity. So that's the emotional side. There's a huge risk to your company if you don't get on the cybersecurity bandwagon. So logically and emotionally, they're both there.
Yep. And to your point, almost everyone nowadays has to meet some kind of compliance framework. And anybody that wants cyber liability insurance has to meet certain specifications. And on those notes, to your exact point, if somebody has to meet a compliance framework and they refuse and you continue down the road with them, look, I know it's easy for me to say I don't own your business, but here's the reality. All of that risk has now shifted to you, whether you like it or not, or know it or not. If they're not meeting that and they get audited, guess who's getting audited? Guess who's getting sued for not taking care of them? Even if you explain to them what they needed to do. And on the insurance side, you know, people are not going to get insurance, or if they don't keep up the things they need to keep up, they're never going to get paid out if there's an incident. But the most important thing that you should know is insurance companies are using, quote unquote, their own MSPs. If a customer they're talking to says, well, I don't think my MSP is doing that, or I don't know what to do, they are literally, this is fact. I've talked to 100 MSPs about it. They are sending out their own MSP to walk in the door and fix these issues. Your customer.
I gotta say, I'm hoping some people just went, ding, ding, ding. How can I become that MSP? Huh, that's a completely different conversation, but man, is that a tremendous opportunity.
Oh, huge.
Not the topic for today though.
No. So let's talk a little bit about how to be successful. You know, in Jennifer's and my world, in our brains, right? And we both probably combined experience is well over 50 years, though I hate to say that. It
Probably. With much more, many, many more years on Matthew's side than mine. We're just gonna pretend like that's true.
Probably at least 10 or 15 years.
Sure, we'll go with that.
But we've been working on this kind of stuff forever. You know, Jennifer's whole business revolves around this. I've consulted with literally hundreds of MSPs throughout my career, whether that be where I'm working at and helping them with that, or literally when I've been in between things, deciding what to do, literally helping MSPs, going out, sitting down with them and working through some of these problems. So we've come up with 5 critical steps that are going to allow you to be successful in what you're doing. So the first one is gap selling. And I'm going to let Jennifer dive into this a little deeper in a second, because she's got a lot of good information on this. But what is gap selling? Well, gap selling basically states simplistically that what you know and what your customer knows are different. And between you, there is this space. The question is, how do I take that space and make it much smaller, right? How do I jump that gap so the customer and me or us are on the same page as to what's going on? Because I can guarantee when you walk in, 99% of the time, there's going to be a gap of some kind in what you know and what you think, and what your customer knows and what they think. And somehow you've got to bring that together. Jen, what do you think? What's important? How do you deal with this gap selling?
Yeah, so I actually express it a little bit differently, and hopefully I'm going to explain almost the opposite of how Matthew just explained it, but we are both saying the same thing. So, but we totally agree on this. However, what I need you to understand is that when you walk into a sales conversation, the prospect, and I'm just going to say prospect and understand it could be the client who doesn't have your cybersecurity solution yet, so they are a prospect from that standpoint. They are a prospective client to buy your cybersecurity solution. They think there's this like itty bitty little problem, like this little speed bump in the road, and they're like, well, maybe we can't print, or the incumbent isn't responsive, or I'm concerned about cybersecurity. We haven't replaced our router in 5 years, or our firewall in 5 years, or we added some new computers and we don't know if they have antivirus, right? So like in their mind, there is like this teeny tiny little problem that they would like you to solve. And in your head, and this is where it's very challenging, especially if you've been doing managed services and even managed security for quite a while, in your head, you know that this teeny tiny problem is actually this massive, like Grand Canyon sized issue. So how do you tactfully explain, no, like you think the issue is just I need antivirus on one computer? Like you think that the problem is just, well, they aren't really responsive, they've gotten big and I've stayed small, and so I don't feel like I'm important to them. And you're thinking, no, like you haven't looked at your cybersecurity for 10 years. You need endpoint, you need EDR or MDR. You need continual vulnerability scanning. Your firewalls are like beige, and this is not good, and you bought them from Best Buy. Like all this is going on in your head, and there really is, when you walk in the door, a complete disconnect in terms of how big the problem is. They think the problem is this big, therefore they think your solution is going to be this big, and therefore they think the investment is going to be this big, because in their head, well, all you have to do is, and then fill in the blank. Like all you have to do is put antivirus on my server and then I'm good, right? And you're thinking, you have no idea. And you're right. The client and the prospect, they have no idea, because they're not on this webinar. They're not subscribing to the same feeds as you are. They're not listening to the same podcasts as you are. They don't know how bad it is. So they're thinking you're going to come in, put a Band-Aid on their network, charge them $400 and say, see you, bye. And you're thinking, I'm going to walk in, and you're a 15-person network, and I'm going to charge $200 per seat times 15. You do that math. Complete disconnect in terms of the problem, the solution, the investment. So
Yeah.
that's gap selling at a very high level. And the way you start to uncover that gap or help the prospect discover the gap is through discovery, which I know is our next point.
Yeah, and for those of you that like new information or looking to learn, there's actually a book out there called Gap Selling. And
Yeah.
I forget who it's by. Jennifer, do you remember?
Yeah, his name is Keenan. He has a first name, but he doesn't use it. So it's just Keenan. And I would say 75 to 80% of that book is fantastic for MSPs. There's only 1 or 2 chapters that you can skip when he starts talking about the boardroom and like complex sales with like 25 decision makers. That's not the typical world that any of us are playing in. But with the exception of those 2 chapters, it is spot on and super helpful.
Yeah, so for those of you that like to learn, want to learn, like reading new things, I definitely suggest picking up that book and going through it. I mean, and if you have questions, you can ping Jennifer, we both read it, we both got information on it. And you're more than welcome to ask us questions as you go through it and make sure that you're understanding it.
Yeah, I actually did some training with Keenan last year. It was
Cool.
super helpful to go from, the book knowledge is good. Nothing, obviously I wrote a book, so nothing wrong with reading a book and trying to apply it, but getting into a workshop where like it's the man himself, in my case, the woman, myself, and you've got 3 hours where he's like, all right, y'all read chapter 3. Now we're going to implement it in your business. So completely different.
Yep. And he's a nutcase, isn't he?
He takes, yes, I'll just say yes.
He's very direct. He has his own thoughts. they're good thoughts, but he's very direct about it.
Yeah, you gotta go in with some thick skin. Put on your thick skin that morning. That's for sure.
Well, I will tell you one of the things that doesn't work with gap selling. I have found coming up on my sales career over the last 30 years, baseball bats, arguing, or telling them stupid. Let me just put those out there. They do not work. Don't make those mistakes.
Yes, agreed.
Anyway, let's talk about discovery a little bit. I mean, the act of discovery really, it's asking questions, but asking them in a way that you get answers you need, as opposed to asking yes or no questions, right?
Yeah.
And saying, well, do you do this? No. Okay. Do you do this? No. Well, that's not telling you what they think, what they feel. It's not giving you any information whatsoever. Continue down the path. I mean, I could teach my daughter, who has nothing to do with IT, to sit there and go, no, 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 no. How does that help you?
Well, and the other thing is it does start to feel a little bit like an interrogation.
Exactly.
Like, you know, and so you've got to really be aware, just from an emotional intelligence standpoint, you don't want to make your prospect awkward, because when you make your prospect awkward, you have eroded that know, like, and trust that we all know needs to be there in order to make a sale. So when you're like peppering them with yes or no questions, not only are you not getting what you need, you're also making them kind of uncomfortable, because they're like, this is like the fifth degree. I'm like, you know, I'm like, what am I supposed to be wearing, handcuffs? And I don't know, like, do I need to
become defensive? They become completely defensive at that point, and you've closed them down rather than opening them up.
Yes.
So, I mean, I call it, and I think there's a book somewhere on it, but I've always called it conversational selling, right? The ability to ask questions while having a normal conversation without someone feeling like they're being come at, but they're being discussed with. You want to kind of expand on that a little?
Yeah, I want to approach this from two different perspectives. So the first thing ties into what I said at the very beginning, which is, for the typical MSP, you are not going to discover anything new. And so too often discovery is taught as if there's like a list of questions you're going to ask, and then the prospect is going to answer. Hopefully you're going to ask really open-ended questions, not these yes or no questions, and they're going to answer, and you're going to say, I never thought about it like that. And that just isn't going to happen unless you've only been in business for a couple of years. You aren't going to discover anything new. I mean, like, I'm going to tell you, you're going to find a server in the closet that mysteriously appeared and nobody knew it was there, and it doesn't have patches. You're going to find, you know, backups that aren't running. You're going to find this mysterious machine over there that apparently the accounting system uses, but nobody else in the company knew it was there, and so it's not patched. And right, like, you are not going to discover anything new. But remember, with gap selling, what we talked about at the beginning is that you are walking in knowing things, and your prospect is completely blind to those things. So discovery is about using those open-ended questions in such a way that the prospect discovers what you already know. So if you're taking notes, write this down, tag me on social media. I would love it. Discovery is for the prospect. Discovery is not for you. And if you can make that shift, now you are adding value. You're being the thought leader, or you're showing up as a leader in your sales conversation. That's what discovery is. Help your prospect take the blinders off and discover what you already know.
Yeah, I mean, some of the best vendors out there that are true partners, not vendors, that's exactly what they do. You know, they work with these MSPs, they talk to them, they understand their business, and they help them understand how their particular product or service fits in there, but more so how it provides value to them, right? How it'll help them grow their business or protect their customers. They don't just give a bunch of features and go, you need my product, here's a go. Now, I'm sure some of them do. They're pretty unsuccessful out there. But it's all about changing the prospect's mindset, not your mindset. So, you know, mindset, I'm sorry about the dogs. There's somebody outside, I apologize. I'm in a place where I can't shut the doors because, well, they'll break through them. So anyway,
Hey,
mindset. Yeah.
Matthew, we did get a question about discovery.
Okay.
That said, as an MSP, I worry sometimes when I discover things, it shows that I wasn't doing my job.
Oh,
Because you're
And
talking to a client, maybe.
well, I think it gets back to your point of discovery is not, something about you, it's about them, right?
Correct.
And maybe you could elaborate on that. We hear that a lot with vulnerability management. Sometimes I worry that if I run vulnerability management, I will discover things that I don't necessarily want to talk to the clients about because it might show that I have not been remediating as I should. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on the discovery side and how do you articulate that to your clients without, if you will, implicating yourself?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things with that, and Jennifer, I'll let you jump on top of this, right? One of the things is talking about, did I just lose my screen?
You lost your screen.
What the heck just happened?
All right, so why don't you find your screen and I'll talk? Is that good? We'll trade places for a second.
Yeah,
So
sounds good.
I'm going to craft an analogy kind of on the fly. So understand with any analogy, it's going to break down at some point. But there used to be this TV show, and someone can drop the name of it in the chat or in the Q&A, and then someone can tell me what it is because I can't see the Q&A right now because too many screens. But it was the concept was I have just fortified my home and I'm going to hire this company to come in and break into my house. Now, I understand vulnerability management, not a pen test. I understand that they're different, but just hear me out. It was so that you could find those vulnerabilities and patch them. It was with a knowledge that, like, I think based on what I just bought and what I invested in and the protection measures that I have in place, I think we're good. But would you rather have a good guy break into the house when you're not expecting it and you're at work and okay, all the emotions and whatever? Would you rather have a good guy break in so you can fix the problems, or would you rather have a bad guy break in possibly when your family is there and you aren't home? Well, clearly the point of this TV show was I'd rather have the good guys break in.
Yeah.
So how I relate that to MSPs is you are saying, listen, we've done everything that we can, but things are improving. The bad guys are getting smarter. Your employees might have clicked something by mistake, even though we're trying to teach them not to. And so we are coming behind us and checking our work. So that's how I would position it, Matthew. I'm curious how you would approach it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, and it kind of hooks onto what you're saying. I mean, one of the things that you need to make sure your customers are aware of, and it's not at them, again, it's a conversation. Look, the security landscape is changing by the minute, literally by the minute. New tools are coming out to help, new things are changing. I'm trying to keep up on all of that because that's my job. However, there is no way one human can keep up with all of that. So should I be protecting you? Yes. Am I doing the best I can? Yes. However, do I need to add new tools to my security stack or change my tools on an ongoing basis to make sure I'm doing the best I can for you? Yeah, because nothing is going to catch everything. Nothing is perfect. And these tools also cost money. So you're correct in assuming that I'm taking care of you, but you're not correct in assuming that I can do it on an ongoing basis without making changes, without updating things, and without, changing what I need to do. I can't be perfect. And that kind of takes us down real quick to leverage recovery as a differentiator.
I love that. I have a whole chapter in my book that's called Risk Mitigation, Not Bulletproof Security.
Exactly.
And so it really does go back to the sales conversation. And if you've already sold your existing clients, then this is probably a great QBR conversation where you're saying, listen, if you bought this from me and you thought like I was promising you nothing would ever happen, then I apologize because I misspoke, or we weren't communicating, or I apologize. I just take one for the team and say, like, I I can't promise you nothing will ever happen. Just like if you buy an alarm system, that doesn't guarantee you'll never have a break-in. It is simply mitigating that risk. It's making it significantly less likely that you'll have a break-in. So don't promise bulletproof security, promise risk mitigation, and then promise that you're always going to keep an eye on it because that's what they're trusting you to do.
Well, and that's it. When you look at this stuff as an MSP, you really want to differentiate yourself. You really want to be honest with a customer. You're going to get breached no matter what I do. Okay. I can charge you $1,000 a month purely in security products, and you're going to get breached no matter what we do. However, here's the difference. We have a plan. We watch things and we know the typical things that happen. And we've got a plan that we use to make sure that we're able to quickly mitigate that risk and make sure everything's back to normal as quickly as possible. And the reason we do that is because we can't, like Jennifer said, we can't guarantee you anything. What we can guarantee you is that we're on top of it, and when something happens, we have a plan in place to make sure we can limit the damage and make sure that you're up and running without any issues. That is a powerful, powerful statement, and an honest statement that if you think other MSPs out there on a regular basis are stating that, you know you're out of your mind. So,
and I would just be careful how you're positioning it. I think you need like that double-pronged approach. Like, not only are we going to make it less likely that you're going to be breached, the reality is you will be. Now, we're going to do everything we can. We're going to put all these layers in. We're going to make it much less likely. You know, hopefully it doesn't happen tomorrow. It happens in 4 years, but we're also going to be able to react to that and respond to that on your behalf and with your help. So just be careful, because if you're like, I guarantee you're going to be breached, then like I would be like, well, then why am I going to pay you $200 a seat? I'll just pay your cheapie rate, and you maintain my server like you've always done. And especially if that's no longer an option, you may have just lost a sale. So just be careful with how you're presenting that. And by the way, there is nothing wrong with practicing out loud. Don't practice in your head. It always sounds great in your head, and then it doesn't come out. So at least I have found it doesn't come out of my mouth particularly perfectly the first time. So practice out loud. How are you going to explain your multi-pronged approach? Not only are we going to make it much less likely, but we also recognize that it probably will happen at some point. Hopefully it's not for years, but we've got a remediation and recovery process in place.
You know what? I appreciate you keeping me straight, because I think have the same problem as some of the MSPs. I assume, which you can never do, that by me saying this, you can't just look at someone and go, hey, you're going to be breached. Oh my God. So yes. I appreciate you keeping me straight on that and letting them know that what I really mean is you just need to be honest about the facts, but make sure you're couching it in a way to let them know you've got them. You're going to take care of them.
100%.
That's the idea behind it. So,
and it's a great wedge, right? Some of my competitors, all they do is try to make you feel great that you can just stack a bunch of tools together and life is great. We're going to play it straight with you. Like this is how we are different. And so now, wow, what a wedge. Maybe they just talked to somebody else yesterday who was like, oh yeah, put all my tools in place, I guarantee. And they're like, I don't know, Jennifer just said nobody can guarantee. Now I don't know, what else did you maybe, speak a little too broadly about? I'm not sure I trust that other company anymore. So it's very powerful.
Well, I mean, like anything else, there are no guarantees. Last time I checked, it's like me with promises. My wife knows, my family knows. If I make a promise, that means I 100% control the outcome of that event or whatever the case may be, because that's the only way I can promise. Other than that, it's a best effort, just like anything else, just like some of the services when someone calls at night or weekends or whatever, and we say, look, there's no SLA, it's a best effort. Well, what you're telling them is, look, honestly, it's a best effort. I'm doing everything I know how to do. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly updating. I'm constantly upgrading. But you know what? By the time I do it, as well as 40,000 other MSPs, they've come out with something new. A bad guy's come out with a new way to get into a system. And all I can do is make sure you're patched, and I've got detection tools and things like that to try to keep you as safe as possible. You know, one of the things I like to always talk about when I do training is that mindset matters, right? Because what I find is, again, and I'm not making fun of you guys out there, but I mean, I just did a session in front of 195 people at Robin Robbins. People came up to me afterwards and said, I felt like you were talking to me.
Hmm.
And one of the things that we talked about that they most brought up is you can't be scared. You are the subject matter expert. Do not go in and be scared. Be confident. Be confident in who you are, what you know, and the process of discovery and everything else that you go through to make sure you're going to take care of them. Don't go, "Hi, I'd like to sell you cybersecurity." And I know a lot of people, and again, Matthew, easy for me to say. No, because I've seen it done. You know, it comes back to also raising prices because security is changing, because there are new tools you need. Don't sit there, okay, and not be confident about who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it. I promise you, it's like a shark in the water that smells blood. As soon as a client or a prospect feels like you're not 100% sure, or you're not showing them why and how and everything like that, you're done.
Yeah,
You're
and I,
done.
I think the other piece to that around mindset is to know, and that means you need to decide before walking into your next sales call what is acceptable for them to say no to and what is not acceptable for the prospect to say no, I don't really want that. Like what is optional and what is not. And once you go through that process, and it may become a wrestling, wrestling match around the whiteboard for your tech team and your executive leadership team, but you have to be crystal clear on that. And you say, you know what, I can budge on that. That is not something I can budge on. And you
Right.
need to know that going in, and just having that wrestling match will give you the confidence that you can say, you know what, I wish I could budge on that. But the reality is in our team, we had a conversation and we said, what is the least protection we are willing to put in place? And I channeled my grandmother, and I thought of my grandmother, I thought of my dad, who is horrible with like the number of support tickets that I handle about LastPass from my dad is like, really? Like it's not that he removed an app from his phone and like it took me 45 seconds to get it back. And he's like, I've been working on it 4 hours. So I mean, right? Like, so just I would say if I was an MSP, I thought of my father or I thought of my grandmother and her recipes and her pictures. And so, what is the minimum level of protection that I am willing to sell or to give to my grandmother? And I would do nothing less for you. And so,
Yeah.
you go in with that mindset that you have done that wrestling and you're like, there isn't anything optional. Or, yes, there are things that are optional. I hate, this is not a conversation about low, medium, high, but if you have optional things, know what's optional. If everything is required, know that. And just
And it's
having that,
okay to do that, right?
yes,
It is
yes,
okay to make the decision, because doesn't that go back to what we were just talking about risk?
yeah,
If you look at a customer and say, okay, I'm not going to fight with you, you can do this, okay? Then you're taking on that risk again.
yep.
You have to decide, as Jennifer just said, what's okay. And don't think what's okay based on the way my customers are going to respond. You have to think what's okay for me. What is the minimum I am going to allow? Because here's what you have to think. You have to think in the process of, if they go down, I'm going down with them. So if I was going to protect myself, or like Jen just said, right, your grandparents, your whatever, what would you do? Because, that also goes to the fact of, and I know you're a big proponent of this, oh my God, you should tell a story? Do people remember or relate to stories? Oh my
Oh,
God.
Yeah, I don't even know if that's a point on our slide deck. And we did talk about recovery as a differentiator. So we're going to need to bounce to the next slide in a second, or this is going to be like the world's longest training. But yes, stories are so effective. If you ever look at how much your prospect forgets about your sales pitch or your discovery session or whatever you want to call it, when you walk out the door, by tomorrow, I believe the number is that they remember 12%, and the day after that they remember like 4%. Like whatever it is, it's abysmal and it's horrible, and I wish it wasn't that, but we are humans and we just forget stuff. However, stories will be remembered. So there's something in the brain, and I'm not going to get into it, but like stories are super powerful. I'm actually got a stack of books behind me because I'm studying how Steve Jobs has told stories, and how like there are some masterful storytellers. We use the word fireside chat. The fireside chat, historically, the president, whose name escapes me, the president who told all of the fireside chats, he leaned heavily into storytelling to get the whole nation behind his vision and to get us into the war and like all these things. Stories are powerful. So,
Well, do you know the latest stats, by the way, real quick? Do you
no.
know stories, right? Stories that have a beginning, middle, and end
Yep.
are remembered over 80% of the time.
Love it. Hey, send me that stat because I need that, because I'm writing a presentation right now for my event that is all around story selling, how to use stories inside of the sales presentation.
It's awesome.
All right,
Anyway,
next slide.
Okay, don't be your own worst enemy. There are things that we do right now that are not effective. And even if we're doing the other things that are effective, this cancels them out. So, Jen, why don't you take focus on closing sales?
All right, I'm going to try to do this in 2 minutes because we are going to run out of time. But closing the sale is the metric that we all measure success by. And believe me, I'm into metrics. I'm into KPIs. I track my own close rate. Like there's nothing wrong with that. However, from a psychology perspective, if you are walking into a sales call and you're like, I got to close the sale at all costs, how do I close the sale? I would argue that you're focusing on the wrong thing, because you should be gradually closing the sale all the way throughout the sales call. It's not like this magical thing at the very end in the last 4.5 minutes of your sales call. There's not a switch that flips in the mind of your prospect that I don't know if I want to buy. I don't know if I want to buy. Boop, ding! All of a sudden, I'm ready to buy now. Let's like.
Well, there are little bits and bytes, right? You close constantly, and you set yourself up for success, right? Close
kind of
number
like
one is about X. Close number
like
two
football.
is about X.
Yeah, we don't go from like, oh, I'm on the, on the 50-yard line to like instantly I've scored a touchdown. I mean, sometimes it happens, you throw a pass, whatever. But there is a process, which we didn't even talk about sales process, but there's a process that happens all throughout the sales call to gradually lead. And if you've done it correctly, your close can literally be, okay, we've talked about these things, like it wasn't my intent to scare you, but we agreed that there are some things that are not okay with the way that your network is managed and your company is set up today, and we're missing some pretty critical policies that you said, the impact of that would be devastating. So I just have one question, like, can we help? Like literally, we work with companies just like yours all the time. We would love to mitigate all of those risks for you. Can we do business together?
Yep.
That's a closing question. Now we're closing, but you can't just do that if you didn't set the whole sales call up for that.
Yep, absolutely.
I don't know that was 2 minutes, but I'm not sure I could make it much shorter than that.
No, you're fine. Let me talk about world events and not using FUD real quick. When we go out there, a lot of times we like to use news articles, right? Because they tell stories. But when you're going into an SMB account, even with 200 employees, they don't care about the target. They don't, because again, it's not going to affect me. So what you need to do is you need to talk about things that they care about. And let me explain. If you use fear, uncertainty, and doubt, everybody used to say, oh, that's the way, no, it's not. As a human, emotionally, if you use fear, uncertainty, and doubt, you are not moving me to action. You are moving me to a paralyzed state because I don't want to make the wrong decision. So I'm now scared, paralyzed, and I'm not going to make any decision because I don't know what decision to make that's correct. So a lot of this kind of goes back to some of the discovery stuff we've talked about, right? Things like, what would it look like if your business was down for 5 days? Tell me. What would happen if you had to lay off 20 of your employees because of a breach? What would it look? You get the idea. Get them in their head, thinking about their business. If you do that, all of a sudden, it's a completely different conversation. And if you do it right, they're telling you what they're scared of. And you're bringing that information out of them. And that's where you need to be. That's where the conversations happen. That's where the closing steps happen. Because you can ask them, okay, well, so that's important to you. Yes. Well, should we talk about ways to avoid that ever happening? The next thing is objections. Look, we, as Jennifer said, we can't spend too much time on this, but on the next two, but I'm going to give you the next one. And Jen, you can talk to the last one real quick. Look, you're going to get objections. Objections are good. And here's why. You've ever had a fight with a significant other ever? And they just go, and they don't talk. They don't say a word to you. Can you fix anything? No, you can't, because there's nothing to fix. They're not talking to you. Any objection is a good thing. It means they're thinking about your solution and they have questions. Therefore, a couple things I'll tell you. First of all, create an objection book. Take a composition book or anything else you want. When you get an objection, whenever you're able to overcome it properly, write that answer down in that book. If there's an objection you can't overcome, write it down in that book. And when you've got some time, sit with other people, role play, ask questions, research, find what you're going to say to overcome that objection the next time. Because objections, especially in this industry, are kind of the same over and over again. Price, time, money, this, I don't agree with this, I don't understand this. The other thing is, two biggest objections I hear about all the time. One, I'm not going to be hacked. Okay, here's how I explain it. Mr. Customer, have you ever seen a bowling alley? Yes. Great. When a bowling ball is thrown down the alley, what's the objective? Well, to hit the pins. Great. Think about it this way. I'm going to dump a bag of marbles on the floor. There are holes all over the place. And these marbles, some of them are going to fall in this hole, some of them are going to keep rolling, some are going to fall in this hole. You're right, they're not targeting you directly, but guess what? If that hole is open, they're going to get marbles in there, and your credit cards and your customer data spends exactly the same way as anybody else's. That's a way to simplify that conversation.
Which is also storytelling, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Second one is, I'm not big enough to get hacked. Okay, or I don't hear about people like me getting hacked. This is where you get to be blunt. Mr. Customer, that's because you're not big enough to make the news. That's because, honestly, people don't report on it, your size business, because it's not sensationalism. It's not a big enough story. It doesn't affect enough people. But I guarantee it's happening. You're just not hearing about it regularly. Those are the way I overcome those two objections. And I'll tell you, 90% of the time they go, oh, because they go, oh, okay, I understand and I understand. So, you know, you can't be scared of objections. You have to look at them as opportunities to continue selling, for you to ask other questions, for you to provide answers to those that help steer them in a different direction. And guess what? As Jennifer said before, you gotta practice. To be good, you have to practice. And here's why. If you just answer it, but you don't have authority behind it, they're gonna know that you don't mean it. They're gonna know that you don't think that. You have to be able to go, well, Mr. Customer, blah, 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 without having to go, well, right, Jen?
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm going to actually, I think the last point stands alone. Don't be scared, be willing to talk to your customer, be the subject matter expert. We've kind of talked around that. I want to piggyback just one point on objection handling is that once you've practiced out loud and you're comfortable, be aware that your handling of those objections will get rusty. Unless you're working 15 sales calls a week, which is not most of us, you will get rusty at objection handling. And so if you walk out of a sales call, I did this a couple of weeks ago, my dreaded sales objection came up, hadn't heard it in a while, and I did fine, but and I was able to overcome it. But in my, like, when I evaluated my own performance, I went, yeah, you've done much better before, and you could have and should have done much better. It's time to knock the rust off. So be aware that it is an ongoing, don't feel like, okay, I created my objection handling book, I practiced them, I'm smooth with all the objections, now I'm good for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
Wish it worked that way, doesn't work that way.
Yeah, one of the coolest things is if you're not part of a peer group, and by the way, I don't belong to any, I don't promote any, but if you're not part of a peer group, or even make friends with another MSP somewhere outside your competitive market, role play with each other, talk to each other, figure out objections, how you'd handle it with each other. You don't have to do this alone. There's all kinds of people out there in this industry that you can talk to. Heck, you can send a question to Jen and I via email. I mean, we're not going to give you 17 hours of consulting for nothing, but we will help you answer a question. We're here to give back to this community, not just sell you stuff.
Yeah, what I probably will do is send you a 15 or 20-minute Loom video, and you're going to say that was more than, like, I thought you'd give me 2 sentences in a text. Nope, I'm gonna give you a little mini training session. I would rather over deliver than under deliver. I want to make sure you have everything that you need to be successful.
Absolutely. So,
all right,
Jennifer.
Yes.
Hey guys. So we did get a question from somebody that what if a prospect says, I'm not ready to spend this much money? So far, they've been doing the minimal and they've been okay.
Yep. So that, okay, I don't know if you saw the slide deck, but that's a great opportunity to walk away, assuming that you haven't done everything in your power to answer that question, to overcome that. And there's ways, I mean, I wish we had like another half an hour to talk through that one, but there's ways to say, I understand, definitely commiserate. The feel, felt, found is a great way to overcome that. You know what, a lot of the people that I talk to, that they felt like almost exactly, I understand how you feel is the feel. And then a lot of people that I talked to felt exactly the same way, because this is a new expense. This is like a budget line item that hasn't existed before. What they found, so there's the feel, felt, found, what they found, and then you can say what they found when they created a new budget line item, or what they found when they went back to their board of directors, what they found when they invested and said, okay, I understand why it's so important. They found that we were the best at what we did, and they actually slept better at night. And then when something did happen after they were our client for a number of years, they found that we were phenomenal for walking them through that day of crisis. Yep. So with that in mind, and then I would ask some kind of a question, tell me where we're going from here, or what are you thinking now, or something like that. You can't win them all. Now, that's why this slide is here. And I think this is the first time I've ever been on a training session where like Homer Simpson is on the slide with us. So, so when to walk away? Yeah, like you can't win them all. You cannot win them all. There's things you can do in advance to qualify budget, make sure you're talking to a decision maker. Like there's good things to do, but there will be times that you have to say, you know what, I can't do this for any less. Like literally I would be, it's like selling you a car with no tires. Like what's the point? That's not the way we do business. Right. I'm going to have to say no. And you just have to be willing.
It's powerful, because if they've spent the time with you to go down this road, and then you say nicely, like Jen, you've tried everything you can, and you say nicely, well, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do business together. Okay? What does that do inside of you if someone says that? It makes you go, huh? Wait a second.
Now I want it more.
Right, wait a second.
Wait, I really do want it, but I just don't have the money. Like, okay.
Right. How can we work through this, right?
Yes.
I mean, the reality is when you walk away politely after you've tried what you can try, I would say 50% of the time, they're going to want to have a further conversation because they didn't realize, they think in some cases, they think they're negotiating.
Yes.
But if you're willing to say no and hold your ground, then I'd say 50% of the time they're going to want to talk further because they're going to be like, wait a second, if you're willing to walk away over this, then maybe I've reached the point of what I have to do.
Yep.
Also, for what it's worth, real quick stat, when I first got into sales, I didn't know better. I was closing somewhere in the vicinity of about 50% of my sales. I thought I was the biggest loser on planet Earth until my boss took me aside one day and said, dude, you're not supposed to close every one of them. Because my attitude was, I was a loser. I sucked if I couldn't close every single one of them. And he finally explained, do you know how good a 50% close rate is? So, understand, it's okay if you close 3 or 4 out of 10. Last time I checked in baseball, that's a 400 batting average. I'd be good maintaining that.
Yep.
So let's talk about Jen's company real quick.
Yeah, so I founded MSP Sales Revolution to help MSPs learn how to sell cybersecurity easily and effectively. And I wrote a book last year, Simplified Cybersecurity Sales for MSPs. It hit the bestseller list. It's got almost 70 reviews on Amazon. I just recorded it to go onto Audible, so it'll be on Audible within a few weeks. And guys, it's a really good book. And I know I wrote it, so of course I'm supposed to say that. But like as I'm reading it into the microphone, I'm like, this is really good. Like I had forgotten because it was a year ago.
It is. I mean, here's the cool part about it. Not only does it give great advice, but and I don't mean this in a bad way, it's simple. It's easy to understand. It's not some complex, strategic selling matrix. And I mean, it's straightforward. You can take what you learn out of the book and use it right away.
And it's for our industry. I am not good at like reading this book that's designed for like e-commerce and being able to like pull out the nuggets and apply it to the MSP world. And so that's how I wrote it for MSPs. I didn't write it for like some massive company that meets in boardrooms and stuff like that. I wrote it for MSPs that are typically presenting to the CEO, CFO, COO in a 25-person law firm, because that's what was in my mind. That's what most of you are selling to. I've also got an event coming up. It's June 13 and 14 in Orlando. I would love to have you there. If you apply the promo code SGI 2023, that will reduce your ticket down to just $1. And we are having people like Wes Spencer come in to talk about the cyber defense matrix. Ian Richardson is coming in to talk about how to take your vision, mission, values and have your team use those to interrupt you less, to give you more time to actually execute on the business. I've got 6 sessions. I'm doing a whole session on objection handling, how to use ChatGPT in your marketing. It's going to be very tactical. Tons of great speakers over 2 days. So
and I'm so sad I'm not be there, but
I know you're close enough. You could drive down. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I could, but I want to speak, and you're already filled up.
I am. I mean, you could go out in the hallway and speak. You might get a few people coming out to this.
Okay. So real quick.
Yeah, so I have a group coaching offer that I work with MSPs, usually give or take $1 million, usually about 750 up to about 4 or 5 million. And I walk them through my 9-step roadmap to make sure that you are able to execute on your marketing and sales and grow your company. So reach out to me, Jennifer Bleam, if you're interested in that. Happy to chat with you.
Okay, so real quick, Nodeware, built by IGI Cyber Labs. Who are we? What do we do? We offer continuous vulnerability scanning, internal and external. You can set it up inside of 30 minutes for any size customer. You get new device alerts anytime something's added to the network. We have insightful and robust reporting. You work from a dashboard, not from a huge stack of reports. It was made for MSPs with a multi-tenant dashboard, and it's meant to scale. It's meant to easily scale as high as you want it to go or as low as you want it to go. Detailed remediation information. When you do the scan on an authenticated scan, you're going to actually get remediation guidance, the link to the patch, upgrade, or string that you need in order to fix the problem without having you go out and spend hours researching it. So it's platform agnostic, it's multi-tenant, it does pull down IoT devices, so anything that's got an IP address it's going to find. No network degradation, rolls out in 30 minutes or less, and it's built in price for MSPs. So if you need anything, if you have questions about sales, if you have questions about the product, if you just want to bounce something off someone, here's our information. You're more than welcome to reach out. We're happy to do it. I don't have a company and do it for a living, but I've done it hundreds and hundreds of times. You know, Jen's even sent some people my way that just had some questions based on stuff that I do, and vice versa. So please ask questions, reach out. We'd love to talk to you about our companies, but even if that's not the case, reach out to us. We're happy to help. That's all I got. Back to you, Stuart.
Well, thank you both. We are at the top of the hour. Thanks so much for attending today. Thanks for asking your questions. This will be recorded. It will be up on our YouTube channel as well. As I said, if you want to see a demo, you know, let's come to our live demo and peer Q&A call to hear from one of your peers. If you're a 7-figure member, come to that event. We're right at the top of the hour. I just want to thank everybody for attending today, and we'll see you on our next session. Jennifer, thanks as always for all your time and insights. And Matthew, great to have you on the team and helping us with today's fireside chat.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody.
Talk to you soon, Jen. Bye, everybody.